Welcome to the Church Explained podcast, a conversation to grow your leadership and build your church. Our goal in this podcast is to share inspirational insights and ideas to resource leaders, churches and teams through our conversations with key team players at Icon Church and other invited guests. In this episode, we're going to be talking about church mergers. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Nathan, and we're your hosts on the Church Explained podcast. And today, we're joined again by lead pastor of Icon Church, Paul Benger. You've been invited back.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Wow. That's a miracle, that, isn't it, really?
It is, yeah.
Great to have you, though.
Yeah, really good.
To be here.
And in this episode, we're going to talk about church mergers, which is
Yeah.
fresh in our memory because just over a year ago, it was meant to be Easter Sunday last year, but through the coronavirus and all of that, we took it forward. We actually merged churches. So, Dave, you were leading the Hub Church.
That's correct, yeah.
And that merged with Icon Church just over a year ago.
Yeah. And I want to say it's been a great year, but before we get into that, Dave has actually done two mergers.
He's the expert.
He's the expert, he is. And Dave was the pastor of a church in Stocksbridge, and another church invited him to become their minister, but instead of just saying yes and leaving Stocksbridge or no and staying, you actually came up with merging that together. So
Yeah, that's right. I was back in sort of 2015, 2016, and it was quite a new concept, I think, in the UK, and especially in this area to be doing something like that. So I'd been leading the church in Stocksbridge, I think, for about 17 years by that time. And we were just about to bring in a new leader. We were about to do another church plant somewhere else. And then the invite came. And really at that point, I thought to myself, well, why, go there and leave this? Can we connect the two together?
Yeah.
So this is the second rodeo, as they would say, the second time round.
Yeah, and although it's the first I've done as a leader, I have been involved. I've been involved as a consultant with a couple of others before that, but obviously not fully in the workings. So I've got some experience around the table of church mergers.
So is church merger kind of like a new thing? And, even new language?
Yeah, I think certainly the language we're not so familiar with more in the UK. I think maybe in America and other parts of the world, the idea of a merger, it's used more in the business setting, isn't it? I suppose we would talk more about partnership.
Yeah, and autonomy.
And autonomy, but certainly it is happening, I think, more and more even in the UK setting now. The churches they're not bothered so much about the language, but they are connecting, they are merging together.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's on the increase, and not massively, but I mean, just been involved in another one myself, which is a UK church merging with a church from Australia.
Yeah. Wow.
So I've been involved in that as well. But I think it's happening a lot more. But in America, it's been around for quite a while, and they in all kinds of different ways and with different levels of success as well.
Is that because there's been the rise of the multi-site, multi-campus model, which there is a podcast on, and you should check that out. I think that's episode 2.
Yeah.
So you should check that out, go back and check that out. But do you think that's why the church mergers? So even just talking your experience, you were leading one campus church in Stocksbridge, and then Rotherham come, and it becomes a multi-campus. Do you think that's more accessible now because that's more, there's more of that about that we know more of?
Yeah, I think so. And some of the stats out there, although American, they say like 40% of all multi-site churches are a combination of campuses being started, but also churches merging in.
Yeah.
So I think it is on the rise. And I would suspect that over the next while, we're going to see much more of that.
Yeah,
One, because by and large it can work, if it's done right. And there is strength to it. I think that's the thing. I mean, there's some good questions churches need to ask themselves when it comes to church mergers, which we asked actually as we were partnering together almost over a year ago. But some of the conversations were happening slightly before that.
Yes.
And we had asked some good questions. I mean, some of the questions we had asked in there. which I suppose other churches kind of ask them. We'll come back to it. Is like, does it make our churches better together? That's a good question to ask. Or, could we accomplish more together than we could apart? Another question good to ask is, could we extend our reach? And those were questions we were asking.
Yeah, we were asking.
Weren't they?
Yeah, and are our values aligned?
Yeah,
and therefore working together isn't going to be difficult, and there's not going to be, such a massive shift. I think tracking, I think tracking sort of some of the history of where this comes from has become, if you go back with thinking on church planting, I think churches years ago, let's say 30, 40 years ago, you would plant another church and then you would let it go as an independent church. Well, that shifted to, could that be a second campus, a second location with some strong connection with us, and those connections, we won't go into the details, can be at various levels. And so that journey had begun. And then that easily then transitioned to churches asking for help and support, potentially becoming, another campus or another location. And then churches actually that didn't necessarily need help and support, but the idea was, can we work together, come together? I think that journey was made simple because of the church planting shift in thinking to a more multi-site, actually merging together to make multi-site or to increase multi-site. Whether that's, people call it location or campus, I think that became easier to think about it.
Yeah. So if we think about the merge that happened just over a year ago, and we'll talk about maybe some of the process and even some of those questions. We'll get into it. But why, we've talked a little bit and we've highlighted a little bit, but why was it unique?
Well, I think there was an existing relationship. Dave and I had been friends for many, many years. We talked maybe 5-6 years before about working together at some level, felt that we thought very similarly as leaders, but also, what could the future hold?
Do you think that's important, that there is a relationship there? I'm just, like if there is a church, down the road, or there is a church somewhere else that likes what you're doing, do you think actually forming that relationship is important in the early?
I think if it doesn't exist, you've got to give time to it. That's what I would say. And I think you can. I think you can do that.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it would be difficult I think it's more difficult if a church just comes and said, can we join you? And then you say, come and join us in 2 months' time. That's a bit tricky, really, because there is no connection, there is no relationship, there is no building together. So obviously we've known each other for, over 10 years or so. You don't need that length of time. But that's what made ours, I suppose, unique, because there was that journey together.
Yeah.
We would sit down, have coffee, we'd talk about all things church and leadership, and the connection was high, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, it was. But even in that relationship, we spent time then going through the process.
Yes.
Asking questions in the process, being strict, I guess, to ask and answer the questions honestly, to go through that process. And that was a period of many months. And then obviously you have to take other people on the journey. So it's great that we had a relationship personally, but then our leadership teams have got to have relationship, and different staff people and so on. So I think relationship is a big thing. You've got to give time to that. So I think ours was unique because of the existing relationship. Unique as well because we both had more than one campus. We had 3 physical campuses at the time. The Hub Church had got 2, so we were becoming 5 physical campuses. And we've also launched online, so we count that as a campus as well. We shared many, I think, similar ideas, certainly shared similar values in terms of what we felt we were like and also what we aspired to be. Some values are a commentary on what you are, and others are aspirational, but they were the same for us. So that wasn't a problem. And then the uniqueness was we did it in a pandemic.
Yeah, we did. But it's been a benefit though, hasn't it?
It has.
I was going to ask the question, did it help?
I think personally it has helped with the churches in many ways because like one of the things we've discovered is that people were able to connect together easily online as a one church model.
Yes.
So they experienced that, people, in the different campuses were able to experience what it was like to be involved with Icon Church.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Quite early on. And I think if they were all physical campuses and you weren't connecting, you may do a couple of events a year or do something, but just to have that quickness of that one church feel, I think it was a benefit actually.
Yeah, and I think that's important to recognise in the fact of what is the model.
Yeah.
Is it a one church? So is it everyone, or is it that kind of like, we're going to be connected, but you can kind of go and do your thing in a sense.
Yeah.
And for us, it is that one church model.
Yeah, we went the whole hog really. I mean, that's the way we're doing multi-campus, isn't it? That it's one church, it's Icon Church. We want it to look, smell, taste, feel like Icon Church wherever it is. It'll have its uniqueness, in any different locality, and that could be unique because of the size. The size is different, unique because the gift mix is different of the people there, and unique because of the buildings. I mean, we've got some physical buildings that are ours. We've got others that we hire. So there'll be some different uniqueness, but in terms of the heart, the culture, the smell, the taste, the feel, even the coffee, we want it all to be the same.
Coffee's important, really.
It is.
And I think just picking up on that, Paul, I think it is to do with our model, and I suppose the one we had with the hub was very similar in the sense of it was shared vision, shared values, shared culture, but a little bit different on the ground in each place, which you've got to allow. Now, other multi-site churches may not go for that, but I think our model allows a little bit of expression on the ground.
Definitely.
But definitely we say it's really important to have the same culture, values, vision.
Yeah.
Now, we know there is different models out there, but I think this is the one that's working for us.
It is, and I think it's not. We don't see it as a limiting thing. No. So I think we could start new campuses, more campuses, but we could start them like we've never started campuses before, particularly with the growth of digital and different things. And so we're not restricted to, what we've done to start new campuses or even to merge with other people and what that might look like and how locally that might feel. It's the sense of, in terms of how we organize ourselves and how we structure ourselves as a church, and also, like I've said, I keep saying this, the look, the feel, the taste, the smell, on the ground.
So we mentioned some of the questions around merging, which we mentioned, would our churches be better together? Could we accomplish more than we could separately? Could we extend our reach together? Why was it important to ask those questions?
Well, I think you've got to have a why, haven't you? I think you lose energy in anything. Why? And I think the why question, I call it the so what question. So what? We join two churches together. We, close one charity and we become one church. So what? What's the big why? What's the big difference? And I think if you don't have that, you lose motivation. And also you've got to check your motive. So for me, what was it? Because I wanted to lead a bigger organization, or was it a genuine kingdom thing? And I'm thankful that for both of us, I believe it was a real kingdom expression. And what we're doing today is a result of it. So one of the things that's come out of it, I'm just trying to work out, 6 months in, we start talking about this idea, which we'd had in previous conversations. Well, come on, let's start working on what we've called Icon Open, which is all the resources that we can now develop together, that we can put in a place and then give them free of charge to any church that wants them. One of those resources is this podcast, the Church Explained podcast. That's one, but there's a load of other resources that we just want anything we create, if we're able, just to say if there's a church that wants it and a church that needs help, here it is. Come and get it. You can have it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think coming back to those questions, I think if you couldn't answer why to those, if you couldn't answer like an affirmative yes to those, you've got to answer the other question is what is the point? Do you know what I mean? Because if you're not stronger together, if you can't reach more people, then why are you doing it now? I suppose because there's different models of mergers, isn't there? Different ways it can happen. So there can be room for that, but I think they've got to be the starting questions, really. If a church is watching today and they're thinking, maybe I'd like to merge with somebody else, or maybe somebody else down the road is asking them to merge with me. I think these are good questions to start with. Will we be better together? Because if the answer is no, then you're just going to cause yourself a lot of headaches, really, aren't you?
Exactly.
For the church and the congregation, you got to think of the people. You got to think of all the processes you've got to go through. It's a bit of a process, really. But if you've got the why, then that's the motive for doing it. Yeah. Can we be better together? Well, the answer's got to be yes. If it's no, then I would say stay away from it.
A big thing for me as well was in terms of the leadership style that we have. Will that leadership style help us if we hit some road bumps or some difficulties along the way, and how are we going to approach this merger? And so our leadership style is very, I would say, family oriented, in that sense that we see church as family, big family, and so we're not the hire and fire church, that just like, we don't like the look of you today, you're out of a job.
Your hair's too long.
Your hair's too long.
Gone.
Everybody's hair's been too long, apart from mine in COVID. But that's not our style of leadership, and people have commented on that, and so we were never going to approach this from a strict, like almost a business, that doesn't work, shut it down. We were going to be more consultative. And we had to ask the question, will that work? How can we make it work? And we've worked together really well, I think, to make that happen.
Yeah. So you mentioned there was, Dave, that there are different types of mergers.
Yeah.
And just highlight those, and then we'll get into the 5 stages of the merger.
Sure, yeah. I mean, this is taken from a great book called Better Together. And I would still recommend that anybody who's thinking of merging or being involved in that, read that book, and you'll find the stuff in there. But they talk about different types of mergers. The one is a marriage of co-equals. But I think the big thing in any of these mergers is you've got to determine the relationship. You know what I mean? When you're going to do a merge, you've got to think, well, who's going to be the lead in this? Then you've got what's called a rebirth. So if a church is struggling, maybe they need to be rebirthed. Then you've got an adoption in.
Yeah.
And then you've got, of course, the ICU. It's often described as when two churches are struggling, they come together and they think that will solve the problem.
Yeah.
I think... it's there. It very rarely works, that one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When
somebody once described that as putting 2 graves together and hoping for a resurrection.
Resurrection. Yeah. I think that's true. But I think that this ICU one is around a lot in some of the other denominations.
It is, yeah.
Where two churches will be struggling. They'll put them together and they think, okay, let's forge something new. That's much more hard work.
And for, I'll get these denominations wrong. I know one of them's the Congregational Church, but they've often merged with another denomination to try and bring people together, together, and they very rarely thrive. I think some are a mix as well. So I would look at ours in some ways as a mix of some of this, in terms of. The two coming together predominantly as a marriage, but then obviously much of what was existed as the hub now is Icon. So there's that adoption of that, but the idea, I guess, the heart was the two coming together and working together in that partnership. Yeah. So.
And you needed that point of the DTR, determine the relationship, because if you don't have that at the beginning. And you begin down that journey, actually it's hard to turn back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think
That's
that was
very
one of the key things we did early on. We said, okay, well,
what is this?
What is this? And who's going to be the? You've got to ask the questions. Who's going to be the lead church?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with asking that.
No.
Doesn't mean one's better than the other. It just means you've got to ask the question, because if you get to the point and two are trying to dance together to see who's going to be leading, that's very problematic.
Yeah.
So we've got 5 stages of mergers written down, and I guess we've talked a lot about the exploration, which is, I like how I've put it, it's like dating.
Yeah.
As you assess the possibility of merger. And we kind of put a little time frame there, 8 weeks, but this is really conversation with the senior leaders.
Yeah.
So this would have been you two kind of sitting down, talking and exploring.
Well, I mean, we'd done a lot of that for months, really.
Yeah.
I would say, but then it's a period where you bring other leaders in and you explore it then in seriousness. So you've shared it with your leadership teams and you start that discussion together. So
because it's got to go from a point of the senior leaders talking about it, then it needs to get to the next level. Whatever your structure is, it's got to go to your directors, it's got to go to your core leadership team. That's the next level down, isn't it, really? In the process, so you've got to have that. That's where you get to your negotiation.
Would there be, because I think that's a really important just point to pick up on, because I think if you don't get buy-in from the others, it's not going to work.
Dead in the water, isn't it, really?
Would there be like one thing or something that we did that actually helped that process?
Well, I think obviously the fact that we talked a lot together before, I think, I'm less strict on the amount of time. I think if the conversation, because it's a relationship, if the conversation's positive, you have the conversation for as long. So I remember I had a couple of Zoom meetings or meetings when I was doing some work in Spain with the leaders from the hub. I think we had a couple of meetings like that, and we had some meetings, in the building. We had brought the leaders together for a day as well. So, I think you've just got to get that buy-in. I don't like that term, but you've got to get that heart, that people. You've got to get that amen, if you like, in the
it's got to resonate
in the hearts of the leaders. That's the good word. Yeah.
I think I just remember back to, because I was in that the exercise we did where we did strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Yeah.
And what it did for me was, I'm involved in this. Yeah. So it's not like you just came and said, this is happening, we're doing this. Yeah. It was like, no, we want your input. Yeah. What are some strengths you see? What are some weaknesses? What are some opportunities? What are some threats?
And to answer those questions openly and honestly, I think that's the key, really, isn't it? Because there's no use doing those exercises if you're not going to do it properly. So I think that they're important to do. That's part of the process of doing any sort of merger or a partnership or connection in there. You need to have a clear process, and I think we had a very clear process of where we were going.
Yeah. We kind of followed this these 5 stages, or made sure that we were working well on these 5 stages. It's not just that you do one and the next one starts, but we were working, and I'd forgotten about that actually until you mentioned it. I did miss my mind, but we did. We had a whole day, in Chesterfield where we just got the flip chart and said, well, let's talk about the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and the threats of the merger, but obviously of our 2 organisations. And so I thought that was a very good day, and a great point that other leaders were involved in that. Yeah.
And like you say, all of these intertwine. So the second stage is negotiation. I'm going to let you say what it is, because it's got some big words in it, Dave, for me.
Well, it's like courtship, determine the feasibility of the mergers. So that's what it's about. Yeah. So you need to have, which is a little bit what we did really on that day. We had that a bit of an analysis, working through some of those things. Are we stronger together? Is there a feasibility in this, or is it just our idea?
Yeah.
Because if, like, coming back to that thing, if we don't resonate, if people don't resonate as around us, then all we're doing is coming up with an idea.
And again, presenting the clarity. Yeah. So that further down the track, there's no surprises.
Yeah.
That you know, and that at that point, any questions can, in that negotiation, I guess, questions can arise that then, as you carry on through the process, you can address.
And I suppose to keep that, we were very open, weren't
Yeah.
we? And made sure that was in there right at the beginning, right through. There's a sense of openness of what we're doing, and we said to all the leaders on both sides of Icon and Hub, look, whatever questions you have, feel free to ask. So it wasn't. I think mergers can't be railroad. You can't railroad a merge. You've got to journey with people. You got to take them with you.
Yeah.
You got to let them ask the good questions, and sometimes the awkward questions. And the awkward questions will sometimes revolve around what is your motive.
Yeah.
And it's good. You must be ready to be challenged with a question like that. Do you know what I mean?
I think so.
Yeah.
So that was important.
And being clear on those leads into the third one, which is the implementation.
Yeah.
Like you're making that public announcement.
So we set dates for that. We produced a little booklet that everybody across all our campuses could take away on that particular Sunday when the announcement was made. And we set a bit of a timeline for about 10 weeks from the announcement.
That's right.
To we were going to merge on Easter Sunday, but we merged earlier. But because of the pandemic. But so that people then, having done this negotiation with leaders, we set out the roadmap, which is a good word. The roadmap for the next 10 weeks of us coming together.
But us doing early, and I know many of that was down to, kind of going online and just like, let's just do this now. But actually having all of these done well, then we could do that early.
Yeah.
And meant it was, an easier process.
Yeah, definitely. And we kept on track with that stuff.
It
was weekly meetings. Me and Paul were having conversations on a weekly basis just to make sure, are we on track with these? Is it moving forward? So I think you're right, Nathan. I think when we got to just doing it a few weeks early, most of the hard work was done, really, wasn't it?
It was.
Do you know what I mean? So I think that was the benefit for us. We thought, well, what's the point of waiting for a few weeks? And let's just do this now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And why try? We've got to go online.
Yeah.
Why try and do two things online?
Correct.
For 3 weeks?
Yeah,
or whatever it
pointless,
was. It meant to be 4 weeks, but it was 3 weeks.
Yeah, it wasn't.
So let's just do the merger this, and let's tell everybody, And so we communicated that well, and then that Sunday, first week online, I think it was 22nd of March or whatever. We're now Icon Church.
Yeah. But there was no surprises for people in the sense, because we had done the previous work.
Yeah.
And we
had the booklets.
Days, we had the booklets. We had those conversations. And I think one of the big things to really point out is, like, when you're doing something of this nature, you've got to have lots of conversations with lots of the right people.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing. Have conversations with the right people who will then have conversations with the other right people.
Yeah. I get, like, what's coming out is communication is key.
Big.
Open communication, honest communication, all
Lots
of
of
that.
it.
Lots of it.
Almost over the top.
Yeah.
That's what you got to be. Almost over the top of the communication.
Like, do we, even if, do we need this meeting? No, let's just meet anyway, because who knows what might come out. So the fourth area is consolidation. Like we talked about the wedding as the union occurs, coming together. Hub Church name now is Icon Church, all of that consolidation. And then the fifth area is the integration, where those two churches begin the hard work of learning how to be one church and do that. And we found in the pandemic, because we went online, we found that actually that has helped us to be one church and to be able to communicate that better.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, with Sundays, because, people from, what was the Hub Church would say to me, the great thing of doing this online is we got to know there's loads of people from Icon Church, because suddenly we see people that they may never have seen, at that. So suddenly they feel part of that. And also we used people from the Hub Church. We've done that as well, in the online platforms. But it hasn't just been the Sundays. The creative teams have integrated, across the campuses, and so they have now. And even I walked into the building last Sunday night for the service, and there was one of the guys from Rotherham there, helping out as well, and learning some of the stuff, some of the technical stuff at our point. And then I know tomorrow, I know nobody knows when tomorrow is because it's a podcast, but tomorrow we're doing some stuff with Stocksbridge, specifically. And so that integration has happened all the way. Connect groups, suddenly all the Connect groups were aligned with Connect Notes and so on. So yeah, the integration has happened for us really well, integrating staff and that has included a shift of roles for some people as well. So obviously there's all that, but again, communication, talk about it, work it through. Yeah.
So Dave, what steps could a leader take now if they're thinking about a merger?
I think go back to the first three questions. If they're thinking about a merger, is there a benefit to it? Or what's the why for doing it? I think start with those. I think, of course, one of the things they could do is contact us.
Yeah, I think they've got to talk to you.
Yeah,
Because
no,
I think I would have to say, and this is that you were very good and very clear in this whole process.
Thank you.
I'm good with detail, but I was more conceptual, and it's Paul and Dave will work it out, but it's not just Paul and Dave.
Yeah,
it's two organisations, it's two charities, it's two leadership teams, and Dave was very good at that. So I would say have a chat with Dave.
Yeah. So, but I think that's a good thing. If people are thinking, we want to merge, have a conversation with somebody who's done it.
Yeah.
Not just pick up a book.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, great. Well, that's it for this episode of the Church Explained podcast, and it's been great to talk around church mergers, and I know we're just kind of like touching the surface, so I know there'll be future episodes on church mergers. I want to thank you for listening, and remember to subscribe, rate, review, leave us a comment, throw in some questions. Wherever you're consuming this content, do whatever's needed to get this out. And maybe you even know some people who are exploring church mergers, and this conversation would help them. Can I encourage you to share it with them and send it on? And we look forward to seeing you next time on the Church Explained podcast.